Well, here it is, folks. My top 3 regrets of stacking silver in 2020. Let's talk about it. YouTube vertical stacker here, and this video has been in the making for quite some time. I've been a little nervous to make it. I don't want to offend anybody. I don't want to burn any bridges or hurt anyone's feelings. And I think by the end of this video, I will have sufficiently explained my reasoning behind my top 3 regrets in stacking silver in 2020, in so much that if you approach it with an open mind, you'll understand where I'm coming from and why I have these regrets. So let's just start out with the number 3 regret that I have. So I'm going to do this in reverse order of my top 3 regrets. My number 3 regret is not selling silver when it hit $29 an ounce back in August. I think it went up to $29.14 or $29.20 or something like that. I have thousands of ounces of silver. A lot of that are generic ounces. A lot of that are American Silver Eagles. A lot of that are premium type silver like you see here. But when I look back and I see that I could have sold, for example, 1,000 American Silver Eagles in BU condition for probably around $35 an ounce, that is a serious regret that I have. Now, I know that many of you are going to be saying, oh, no, that would have been foolish to sell it at $35 an ounce. Well, the bulk of my generic and the bulk of my ASEs that I've purchased over the years, I've purchased at less than $20 an ounce. So while I have some that I've purchased at $40+ an ounce, the bulk is less than $20 an ounce. So that would have been a smart thing to do in hindsight, looking at the price of silver and particularly what people were paying for American Silver Eagles back in August and September timeframe. So that is my number 3 regret, is just not selling silver when I otherwise could and probably should have. Depending on what happens in 2021, I may or may not make the same mistake. One of the big struggles I have, as I think many stackers do, is that we hate parting with our stack. It's a struggle. You have a pile of gold, you have a pile of silver, palladium, whatever it is you have in your stack, and it's difficult to let it go unless you're of the mindset that you have certain parameters, and once those parameters are met, regardless of how shiny it is, regardless of how pretty it is, regardless of how much emotional value you may have attached to your stack, you're just going to let it go. So that's my number 3 regret, is just not selling the American Silver Eagles, probably 1,000 or so of those that I could have, when I could have sold them for about $35 an ounce. All right, my number 2 top regrets of 2020 in silver stacking is that I bought way too many different types of silver. I was too diverse. I mean, just look at this stack right here. I don't know that there's any 2 of the same coin or round here. Certainly not pours, because there's no 2 custom pours that are alike generally. But it's just amazing the diversity. I have kookaburras, I have the Britannias, I have all kinds of Canadian stuff. I have Philharmonics. I've got Somali Republic stuff. I've got pandas. I mean, I just have, in my stack, and this is just a very small portion, of course, but in my stack, I bet I have coins from 100 different countries. and I would say that in the last year, I've probably bought coins from about 70 different countries. When I say from the countries, I mean representative. The denomination comes from a country, whether it's the Isle of Niue or England or Australia or United States or what have you. But it's just a regret that I have. I wish, in hindsight, as a stacker, that I just would have stayed to something more narrow as far as the scope of my stack. I wish I would have just stuck with American Silver Eagles, or maybe American Silver Eagles and Britannias, or something of that nature, but just not a whole bunch from everywhere. And I'll tell you why. My LCS, when they look at silver, they look at silver in two ways based on my interactions with them. They have generic silver, and then they have American Silver Eagles. And that's kind of what they do, is they put generic silver, which would include things like kookaburras and pandas and Somali Republic elephants or whatever they are, and they would just put those in a generic stack. And then the American Silver Eagles, they would look at that as more of a premium type silver. Now there's some exceptions to that rule. They know that there are certain coins out there that do have quite a premium attached to them, and they pay attention to some of those. But by and large, the kookaburras, the pandas, some of the Canadian mint stuff, the Britannias, those all just go into their generic bin that they sell usually $1 to $2 over spot. So that's one of my regrets, because I couldn't take these to my LCS today and get anywhere near what I paid for these. Now, there's another underlying story behind that, which kind of transitions me to my number one regret. And this is the one that's I'm most sensitive to talk about, because I don't want anyone to misunderstand, because I look at this from a stacking perspective, and then I look at this from a content consumer perspective. And let me explain the difference there. As a stacker, I always, generally speaking, try to find the most silver I can for the least amount of money. Generally speaking, of course, that would be a lot of generic rounds, or if I'm lucky and I find a good price on American Silver Eagles, then I can get a roll for $350, $400. Not lately, but certainly early this year you could do that. So what do I mean? Why is it a regret? All of this, as a stacker, as solely a stacker, I regret terribly, terribly. And let me help you understand why. And some of you are going to recognize these things, and some of them are going to be from channels that are very recognizable. For example, we'll start here. One of our fellow stacking channels, Yankee Stacking, we all know the Yankee Stacking channel. This is the number one Yankee Stacking 2020 round. Now, again, I know that Yankee will likely agree with me on this, but from a purely stacking perspective, for the amount of money that I paid for this round, it was a poor financial decision. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever to pay the amount of money that I did for this lump of silver from a stacking perspective. Similarly, this is a Millennium Falcon prototype pour from Silver Dragons, another channel that we all know. Again, I can't even remember how much I paid for this, but this is 3.5 ounces of silver, and it would not make any financial sense whatsoever to spend as much money as I spent on that from a stacking perspective. Same thing, a lot of these other coins or rounds that I have here, I bought these on auctions, YouTube auctions, the ones where there's 30 or 40 people in there and the chat's flying and everybody's having a good time, and then someone puts up, oh, look at this neat triangle round or coin, this ship on it from whatever, and the juices get flowing and you start bidding, and then the pride and the ego kicks in, and you're not about to get beat by that other guy or gal, and so you keep bidding higher, this is worth $30, and then it goes to 40, and then 45, and then 50, and then 55, and then the ego really starts to flame because, well, I'm a whale. I have lots of money. I've got deep pockets. I'm not about to let that other whale or that new kid on the block beat me. So by golly, by the time I'm done, I just spent $135 on an ounce of silver. That, from a stacking perspective, is my top regret. And so I just want to throw a word of caution out there to new stackers and those who are coming into stacking, or even those who have been there for a while who are starting to visit auction sites. Most of the auction sites out there, they're my very good friends, and they'll understand why I'm saying this. It doesn't make any sense to spend 2, 3, 4 times the amount of the value of silver that's in one of these things, because when you take it to your LCS, you're going to sell it for $26, not the 113 or the 85 or whatever it is you paid for it. But that's the difference between being a stacker, right, on the one hand, and I would never buy this type of stuff solely from a stacking perspective, because that would be foolish, and I try not to make foolish financial decisions. However, on the flip side, as a content consumer, I can appreciate a channel that has put forth a lot of effort, who has done things for the community, who is educating the community in some positive way, at least subjectively, that I view as a positive way. And so I will support their channel by overpaying for a kookaburra, or overpaying for a slabbed MS-63 Morgan dollar, or overpaying for a custom pour. Does that make sense? I hope it does. Now some of you are probably going to think, well, you're still a fool. You're still a fool giving those channels your money like that. Well, we can agree to disagree. But the bottom line is, I know what I'm doing when I go to those auction sites. I know that I'm going to overpay, but because of the respect that I have for the channel, for the effort, and for their content and their creative thinking, I have no problem putting more money onto a clump of metal. At least I'm getting something out of it. If I were to go to a bar or to a casino, or who knows what other things you could spend money on that we don't need to mention here, at least here I know I'm always going to come back with something, right? Even though it's just an ounce of silver or a couple ounces of silver on a custom pour, I'm getting something of value, plus the entertainment. And some of these channels really are truly entertaining. So understand the difference between content consumers and stackers. Two different perspectives. Objectively, you can put a value on these things. Subjectively, I can also put a value on content creation. I'm a content creator. I don't do that well at it, but I'm having a good time. It's not about money for me necessarily. It's about educating. It's about participating in the community, about building relationships. So those are my top 3 regrets of 2020. But as a content consumer, I don't regret, and I want to make it very clear, that I don't regret spending the money I've spent on, for example, this amazing kookaburra yellow, gold, and ruthenium plated 1 ounce of silver that I don't even know how much I spent on that either. Probably 80 or 90 bucks, 100, who knows what it was. But anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. My top 3 stacking regrets of 2020. Stay tuned, and I'm going to have a plan moving forward for 2021. Vertical Stacker, till next time.